guys hear me? Okay. Hi guys, my name is Noah. So today I'm going to talk about the strategies of making changes and our reflections from Taiwan. So 10 years ago, this community called GovZero started in Taiwan. It started from having a bunch of hackers trying to open up government data, and later in the years, it became a beacon of digital democracy globally in the world, a leader of digital democracy in the world. And in recent years, the momentum has slowed down a little bit. So 2 years ago, me and my partner Vivian here basically started this initiative called DAO0. And the mission was to supercharge GovZero, to supercharge the digital democracy movement. And we did a bunch of things. These include the decentralized ID pilots in Taiwan. These include various retroactive funding experiments. These include a lot of research funding the Commons Taipei, DAO Taipei, Plurality Taipei, a bunch of different things. But at a certain point, I started asking myself, what has really changed? Were we really able to help? At a certain point, despite the relative success of all the experiments, this year in April, GovZero basically posted this picture saying that, okay, so we're running out of funding, please donate to GovZero so it can keep running its bi-monthly hackathons continuously, which the bi-monthly hackathons for 10 years, it has never paused once. So this is a signal that maybe despite all the experiments that we've done, maybe we need to go deeper on how we can make systemic change in the future. So if we are to initiate something new, if we really want to change system to the better, positively, sustainably, what are the strategies we are to adopt, what are the potential tools we can use, and what are the roles we need to play inside these systems. So I think, of course, there are a lot of research being done, and one of them is probably a lot of people here is not so unfamiliar with, is the complex systems. I won't go into details of what complex systems are, but I will talk about the concept of emergence. So emergence is the system's behaviors. For example, the birds you can see right here, the flock of birds, the movement, how it moves, this is the phenomena. This is the emergence of a system working together. And the crypto market going up and down, the stock market going up and down, how the traffic moves, these are all example of emergence. And what caused this emergence? The answer does not lie in the individual unit, the composition of the individual unit, but take the birds for example, it's just a couple of simple rules that make the birds move this way. And it's actually really simple. The birds basically think about, I won't stay too close or too far from each other, and I will align my direction of flight according to the birds around me. So that's how these emergence becomes. So if change is emergence, and emergence is caused by a set of simple rules, then maybe sustainable change, if we want to make change, then we need to build the adoptions of new rules, new interaction rules that's naturally developed. Not someone tell us what to do, but naturally developed between the individuals inside the systems. So these are some, if you if you scan the QR code, you can see a full article talking about all these potential leverage points that we now know that the point of changing the systems is basically to change the rules of interactions and what kind of tools can we use. So the less powerful and lower order tools are changing the inputs and outputs of the systems or changing the speed of inflows and outflows of the system. What people will be familiar here is the mechanism design. You can design the punishment, you can design the rewards of the system to encourage people to do certain things. You can also change the goals of the systems. These are some leverage points that people can use to basically try to change how a system behaves. However, if you think about it, that we don't always listen to our teachers, right? Or we don't always listen to our CEOs, our boss. We don't always listen to the leaders in the DAOs. And they can have rules set up for the organization, but we don't always behave that way. The interactions between me and my peers, individual with another individual, is not always follow the rules of the system. And the more powerful leverage points that people can use is actually changing the mindset, changing how people believe, what people believe, changing the paradigm of a system. That's the more powerful leverage point that people can use. But coming back to now, I know the key is to change the rules, and the leverage points are the tools. Where do I put myself inside a system that has the biggest potential to make actual changes? There are 4 that I listed. The first one is top-down. Right, top-down. I don't need to talk about the problems with the top-down approach. There's corruption. There's all that. But the real limitations, the strength of the top-down approach is that it has access to a lot of different tools that we talked about. It can change the taxes. It can change the bottom line. It can have the punishment. It can have the reward mechanisms to do mechanism designed to change the system. But take global SDG goals, for example. It's a very top-down approach, right? But only 16% of the global SDG goals are on track right now. There are limitations to what the top-down approach, despite all the problems, can actually change in today's world. And so this is the top-down approach. The second one is bottom-up. We talk about decentralized organizations. We talk about all these movements, Occupy Wall Street and all that. And of course, the bottom-up approach, you don't have as many leverage points and the tools that you can use to change the systems. But you might have the most powerful ones, which is the changing the paradigm, changing the mindset, changing the beliefs of the whole system. So, and the way to measure success for this bottom-up, think about what the Mandela's idea that Aya mentioned in the starting keynote. That's one example of influencing, inspiring the system. And the measure is basically not to measure the actual system output, but to measure the initiatives that these bottom-up approaches actually inspired. So this is how we measure the success of these bottom-up approaches. The third one is the outside-in approach. So basically, you have the pop-up cities, you have the network states, you have the experimental schools, and the problem with these these outside-in approaches is very clear. That is, doesn't have direct control over the tools, over the leverage points that we just talked about. You have to indirectly influence the top-down or the bottom-up approach to basically make changes. But it's not unprecedented. Experimental schools in the 1990s basically was the inspiration for No Child Left Behind policies in the United States. So that was one of the cases that was successful. But the one I really most want to talk about that's the most effective is possibly the catalyst approach. So Christina Figueres was the head of UNFCCC. In 2015, she pulled together 195 nations to agree upon the Paris Agreement, which probably most people have heard about here. And the key turning point, how she would talk about it, is that she has this stubborn optimism that pushes things forward. But I think the key turning point is that she pushes enough. It's clear today now, but it wasn't back then. It's pushes forward the clean energy industry to the point that the cost is lowered and the capacity was increased to the point that it made economic sense for the nations and for the corporations. And not just to meet their existing goals, but to exceed their current goals. So the key here is how might we develop, nurture, build solutions that are value aligned, but at the same time, it helps existing system players to exceed their goals. That should really catalyze the changes that we might want to see. So, but with all the changes, we know the strategies, we know the tools, and we know what kind of roles we play. How do we know that we are really making positive emergence? The answer is we probably don't. Zuckerberg didn't imagine that he will cause a whole generation of anxiety when he started Facebook, right? But if you look at Peter Senge's 11 laws of systems thinking, the highlighted ones, today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. The harder you push, the harder the system pushes back. Faster is not always slower. So my personal guideline from making changes now, the first one is to be catalyst, because that's probably the most effective way of making changes. Hold on to stubborn optimism, to learn from Christina figures, to learn from the Paris Agreement example. Build value-aligned solutions that help system players exceed existing goals. So not just build ethical solutions, but also make sure these ethical solutions at the same time may be able to, for example, be more profitable than the existing solutions. So the system players go towards that direction. Slowly, caringly, because we don't know what kind of negative externality we're going to create, and no blame. This is system ignorance. It's not one person's fault. So we are all in this together. We all have a responsibility. So hopefully this is helpful for the change makers out there, and that will be my talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noah, for sharing your insights. So we'll begin the Q&A portion. If you haven't already yet, please scan the QR code or open the Devcon Passport app to submit your questions. So we'll start with the first one. Thanks for the great insights. Not to split hairs, but isn't Catalyst just a different form outside in?
Yeah, I think it depends how you look at it. So basically, the difference is the outside-in approach is like the pop-up villages or the experimental schools. They build a perfect world outside of the existing systems, but the catalyst is actually working with existing system players to make sure they achieve their goals. So the outside-in approach is mostly like a demonstration, right? But it's not directly influencing the leverage point inside the existing systems. Yet the catalyst is directly trying to influence the leverage points inside the system. I think that is the difference.
All right, and while we are, another question. If you can go back to 2 years ago, what would you change?
Wow, this is something I'm just starting to think about, so I'm not entirely sure. But like I said, I will probably try to adopt the catalyst approach and see how I can work with existing system players, try to understand their goals, and take time to develop the kind of technology, the kind of solution that's driving this forward. One example I think might be interesting. Recently, there's a book called The Infectious Generosity, written by Chris Anderson from TED Talk, from Wired. And so that book is talking about how generosity combined with creativity can actually be a business strategy that, because generosity can go very viral on the internet. So if we infuse that value-aligned solutions with the existing goals of the system players who is wanting to get more exposure, that might cause some changes. So that might be a direction that I'm thinking about as well.
All right, and I see we have some upvoted questions. So say someone wants to start a movement to achieve more visibility in a country with a lack of culture of digital democracy. How do you get started?
I think it is very different in every single country, or it is very different in every single context. But so I cannot say for sure. But of course, what I did not talk about is the way of changing system is that I assume that the original systems is already intact and can be changed. But there are, of course, certain scenarios where the existing system should be overthrown or should become a competitor of the existing system. That's a completely different scenario that we're talking about. So it really depends on the context. But happy to answer if you can give me more context when I go down the stage. Happy to talk.
Thank you so much, Noah. We are at time for his session, but if you are really interested in getting to chat with him more, please feel free to look for him